The tiger is arguably the most charismatic predator on our planet. The thrill of watching a tiger in the wild is an unforgettable experience. But how long can we enjoy this thrill? The tiger is an endangered species. Relentless poaching and loss of habitat have pushed the tiger to the brink. Barely a century ago, more than 100,000 of these majestic animals roamed the jungles of Asia. Today, a little over 5,000 tigers are left in the wild. In fact, there are more tigers in captive breeding farms than in the wild. It is estimated that around 8,000 tigers are currently being held captive in these centers across the world. They are bred for illegal trade in tiger parts. The one country which holds the key to the long-term survival of the species is India. It is home to over 75% of the world's tigers. And when India counts the number of its wild tigers, the world holds its breath. Join me as I travel in the footsteps of the tiger across this vast nation to film this momentous event. And find out if the tiger numbers in India are increasing or going down. The outcome of this count will decide whether our future generations will continue to enjoy the sight of a tiger in the wild. As a wildlife filmmaker, I've traveled to some pretty crazy places. I've been charged by rhinos, surrounded by a herd of elephants, walked the mangroves with man-eating tigers, all part of the game. It can sometimes get hair-raising and dangerous, but never boring.
God, I can feel them crawling all over me.
But my adventure counting wild tigers across India was one of the most unique and fascinating experiences ever. I spent nearly 2 years following the foresters and scientists of India as they went about counting India's tigers across 51 tiger reserves. This was the first ever time any camera teams were given access to cover this estimation exercise. I got to travel across the length and breadth of India, from the foothills of the Himalayas to the Cardamom Hills in the south, from the grasslands of Assam in the east to the dry scrublands in the west, and the central Indian plains. I walked in the footsteps of the tiger across this vast nation to see how it was doing. India has some of the most stringent laws to protect its wildlife, including the tiger. Yet in the past, poachers have found a way to strike their target. There's a huge demand for tiger body parts among certain Asian countries. Their bones are used in health tonics and folk remedies. Even their whiskers, claws, and tails are used in traditional medicine. And the skin is used as a status symbol among some cultures. It's obviously a lucrative business and controlled by international crime syndicates. Therefore, India needs to constantly monitor and take stock of its wild populations. Every 4 years, a nationwide estimation exercise helps the authorities keep track of how the tigers are faring in different geographic locations. How do you count the tigers? In the past, foresters would depend on physical sightings, and they would make casts of tiger pug marks. This wasn't a very accurate representation of tiger numbers. Often the same tiger would end up being counted multiple times. Duplicate counts resulted in paper tigers, tigers that existed only on paper, and a false sense of success in tiger conservation. It's only when some of the key tiger reserves suddenly found all the tigers had been wiped out from their areas by poachers, a hue and cry was raised. A more accurate method of counting was the need of the hour. That's when science and cutting-edge technology was used for the first time to count tigers. And I was lucky to get a chance to film this first ever attempt at scientific count of the tigers. I wanted to cover all the different landscapes in which the tiger has made its home across India. My first port of call was the grasslands of Kaziranga Tiger Reserve in the east. This park has the highest tiger density anywhere in the world, but to track the tiger in these grasslands is a different challenge altogether. The tall grasses can hide an elephant and rhino, leave aside the tiger. It's dangerous to walk around. There are over 6,000 wild animals, many capable of killing a man. The safest way is an elephant patrol. As we set about filming the counting exercise, I wondered what the count would reveal. Some experts believed that the park is already overcrowded. Would there be space for more tigers? The first part of the census involved collecting physical signs of the tiger's presence. Pug marks, tiger scat, and kills all point to its presence in an area. But instead of relying on manual records, the scientists this time devised a software to be used on smartphones. Called M-Stripes, the software records all these digitally and tags the locations using a GPS. These records cannot be tampered with and give an accurate map of tiger presence across the country. More than 40,000 foresters across 21 states of India went to work. It was fascinating to watch the young and older staff come to grips with technology. Most of them had to go back to school. Training sessions were held for them so they could become familiar with the new technology being used. The next part involved fitting camera traps on all the routes the tiger had been spotted by trackers using their smartphones. These cameras are motion sensitive, and each time any animal walks past, they click a picture. To film this part of the count, I went to the marshy swamps of the Sundarbans Tiger Reserve. This is the only mangrove in the world where tigers are found. These tigers have evolved over centuries to adapt to the hostile terrain and its limited resources. So it's extremely important to protect this unique group of tigers. But it is no mean task to place camera traps here. While most of the tiger reserves have beat guards tracking the movement of tigers in their areas on a daily basis, there is no managing the tigers of the Sundarbans. Most guards are reluctant to set foot in the forest, and to be honest, who can blame them? The ground is riddled with pointy roots, and walking in the swamps is a challenge. So when the time came to set cameras for the count, armed guards accompanied us into the forest. But even with their full protective gear and guns, the guards were constantly on the edge. While in most of the parks the scientists were fairly certain of tiger routes and could confidently place the camera traps, it was a different matter here. They needed to make sure that the tigers would come to the spot where the cameras were placed. A drink of sweet water was placed in front of the camera, and if that didn't work, a special mixture of rotten eggs and fish was prepared. A cloth is dipped in this and placed nearby and also spread on the leaves around the spot. the odor is bound to attract the tiger. As soon as the cameras are in place, all of us rush out of the forest and quickly get onto our boats, thankful not to have met the fearsome tigers of the mangrove. While all of us were extremely tense during the filming, I couldn't help but wonder about the future of these tigers. Despite spending many weeks filming in the Sundarbans, we hardly got to see any tigers, so I wondered if their numbers were going down. Only the result of the count would reveal the true picture. Over the next few months, I traveled to many different tiger reserves to film the scientists collecting DNA samples and other data which would help them draw an accurate map of India's tiger population. I went to the Jim Corbett National Park in the foothills of the Himalayas. An amazingly beautiful landscape where we filmed a magnificent tigress called Parwali. And I spent considerable time filming in the forests of central India to capture some amazing tiger stories. It was summer and the sighting was great, but we had trouble with our equipment. One afternoon, following fresh pug marks, our guide took us to the territory of a tigress called Spotty. I was really excited to film the tigress with her cubs, but just at that moment, our main camera conked out in the extreme heat.
It's really hot today. What do we do?
Utter panic followed.
Anything else cold? रहमान भाई कुछ और ठंडा आइस वगैरह कुछ please?
Finally, just in the nick of the time, it came back to life and we got a wonderful sequence with the tiger family. Over the next couple of months, all the data from the field was constantly being fed to the Central Tiger Cell in Dehradun at the headquarters of the Wildlife Institute of India. So my next destination was to reach the counting center and to film the final part of the process. This bit was fun and a bit of an eye-opener. I wasn't aware that tiger stripes are as individualistic as our fingerprints. No two tigers can have the same stripe patterns. This gives the scientists an absolutely accurate count of tigers captured on trap cameras. More than 30 million pictures were captured during this period, and not all featured the tiger. Many other animals also walked past the cameras and were clicked. A computer software segregated different species and isolated the tiger pictures. Then a team of scientists went about identifying the tigers using the stripe patterns. Wow! Science and artificial intelligence have made the process so simple and accurate. Finally, the day arrived when the results were to be collated. It turned out to be as exciting and nail-biting as an election night when you stay up late into the night to find out which political party had won. So far, the scientists had received mixed trends. Some of the smaller parks were struggling, but the bigger parks seemed to be faring well. I was really anxious to find out the final numbers, and finally, we had them. The count revealed that the overall number of tigers in India had gone up. Currently, there are more than 3,600 tigers in India. However, some of the smaller reserves had lost their tigers and work needed to be done to reintroduce them in these parks. Another trend that emerged from this count was that some parks had reached their carrying capacity and more protected areas needed to be created where the tigers could be safe. But the big positive was that the tiger population in India was growing, a good sign for the long-term future of this majestic predator on our planet. My amazing adventure counting tigers was coming to an end. But I had the satisfaction of knowing that the outcome was positive. And thankfully, this time around, the winner was the tiger.